Hello, everybody. Today in this segment, we are going to be talking about the role of the announcer in hockey. We are happy to be joined by our guest today. He is known as a voice of the Toronto Maple Leafs, play-by-play announcer Joe Bowen. Hello, Joe. Welcome to Halftime.
Thank you very much, Giancarlo. Nice to be with you.
So, Joe, as mentioned, you are the longtime voice of the Toronto Maple Leafs. When did you decide that you wanted to be an announcer, and what was it about the profession that interested you the most?
I decided I wanted to be an announcer when I found out that I wasn't good enough to play goal. I suppose what really kind of made me want to get involved was just a desire to stay in sports and in particular in hockey. So once you decide that you're not going to make millions of dollars, trying to get a job and being involved in broadcasting was the next best thing.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the role that the announcer plays in hockey and the importance that the announcer has for the fans watching or listening to the game?
Well, I guess it's twofold, I suppose. It started with the radio industry more than anything, and an ability to connect with fans at home who aren't able to go to the arena or the ballpark or the stadium. The announcer in the role has changed dramatically when television arrived and the people could see what was going on. It became more of an identification and a color kind of an aspect of it, where radio, you're still trying to paint somewhat of a picture as to what's going on in the listener's mind. So the announcers have got a very important aspect in either radio or TV, and it's kind of the information and or painting of a kind of a visual picture for people who aren't actually at the game.
For those joining us on CHRY 105.5 FM, we're speaking with Toronto Maple Leafs play-by-play announcer Joe Bowen. Now, Joe, you've been a part of the Toronto Maple Leafs for decades now. What's it like being part of such a historic organization?
Well, it was when I was growing up, Giancarlo, I was a Leaf fan, so it's really been a dream come true. A lot of things have changed as far as the team is concerned. We've seen excuse me, some changes even this year, and we've seen a dramatic amount of changes. But, I mean, the team has gone from a family-owned business that Harold Ballard and Stafford Smythe owned to a conglomerate that is owned by two of the largest companies in Canada, in Bell and Rogers. So a lot has changed both on and off the ice over the 33 years that I've been involved in doing the Leaf games.
You mentioned about the changes that have been made. During the off-season, management and coaching staffs, they make many changes in order to be prepared for when the season starts. Can you describe to the listeners how you prepare for an upcoming season?
Well, there's not an awful lot you can do until the season actually gets upon you because, as you mentioned, there's going to be a lot of changes back and forth. So by the time training camp arrives, you have a pretty good idea as to who or what changes have been made and who exactly might be, in fact, wearing the uniform. So a lot of it is more done on the computer now than it used to be when it was all done by hand, but you're doing research on each of the players and doing your own little cheat sheets, if you will, to have with you when the season starts, and you try to incorporate that into all of the other teams in the National Hockey League as they've gone through their changes as well. So if things sort of kind of gear up a little bit, maybe the mid part of August and on into the training camp series.
For the many listeners out there who have heard you do play-by-play for a Leaf game, they're familiar with hearing your catchphrase, Holy Mackinaw. How did you come up with that phrase, and did you think it would become such a popular catchphrase among the fans?
Well, I never thought it would be a catchphrase at all. My dad used to say it when I was a kid, and unfortunately my dad passed away before I went into high school, so I never really found out where he got it from, and I didn't utilize it until about 5 years into doing games with the Maple Leafs, and one night it just kind of blurted out for some inexplicable reason, and the fellow who was doing color with me, Bill Waters, almost fell off his chair laughing. So I thought, well, if I got that response from him, maybe I could use it again. And so it's become a bit of a catchphrase over the last number of years.
Once again, for the listeners just joining us on CHRY 105.5 FM, we're speaking with Toronto Maple Leafs play-by-play announcer Joe Bowen. Now, Joe, what advice would you give to some of the listeners who wish to become announcers one day?
Practice your hockey more and become a player. It's a lot more lucrative and probably almost as easy to get in. There are almost 700 or 400 and some odd positions in the National Hockey League. There are about 60 positions as far as doing play-by-play in the National Hockey League. So it is a very fortunate aspect that I have been able to maintain over these years, but there aren't a lot of openings and there aren't a lot of opportunities for play-by-play, at least at the National Hockey League level. Now, there have been so many advances and so many expansions as far as radio and TV is concerned, specifically TV over the years, that a lot of other games are being done, not only American Hockey League, but junior and other sports. So to that end, there are opportunities, in other aspects of the broadcasting industry that certainly weren't there when I started. So it's a matter of honing your craft, doing as many sports and different sports as you can. Try to be yourself and do what you can as far as doing as many games as you can to kind of develop some sort of a style, and hopefully it all works out.
That's great advice. Before we wrap up, Joe, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask some rapid-fire questions to you.
All right.
First rapid-fire question. What was the most memorable Leaf game that you called?
Nicky Borashevsky's goal, 1993 overtime against Detroit.
Which Leafs rivalry game do you enjoy calling the most?
Ottawa Senators. Hate them.
The Toronto Marlies are going to be in the AHL playoffs soon. Which Toronto Marlie has impressed you the most this season?
Connor Brown.
Over the last few years, which Toronto Maple Leaf do you think is the most underrated?
From this past team? Oh, boy. I would say probably Roman Polak.
And final rapid-fire question. Each year, there are a certain amount of players and contributors to the game of hockey that are inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Who do you think most deserves to be a Hall of Famer?
Oh, boy. That's a tough question. You know what? I was very happy that Pat Quinn got in last year. And I think if there was someone as far as management or a player is concerned going forward, I would think maybe Doug Gilmour.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. Thanks, Joe, for taking the time out to chat with us here on Halftime, and we wish you all the best for next season.
And thanks for having me on.
That was Toronto Maple Leafs play-by-play announcer Joe Bowen. Now, we're going to throw it back to the studio for more Halftime on CHRY 105.5 FM.